everybody doing? My name is Mike Monteiro, and I am a designer, and I'm also an immigrant in fascist-occupied America. It's wonderful to be speaking here in Britain, the other proud member of the Own Goal Club. Good job with that, everybody. On September 23rd, 2017, the neurosyphilitic cocksplat we call Donald Trump declared war on North Korea. It was 8 p.m. He'd just eaten dinner, probably a couple of cheeseburgers, fries, Coke, or maybe something that came in a big bowl of failure from Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he was probably watching Fox News while he did this, so he's getting angry and his arteries are clogging up. And he finally gets angry enough to take a shit, because he can only shit when he's angry. And if he's shitting, he's tweeting. So he tweets out a declaration of war to North Korea. And if you're wondering whether it's actually a declaration of war, let me assure you, North Korea was not. They called it a declaration of war, and they in turn, well, they started threatening to shoot down US bombers. Of course, once the North Koreans and the Americans start going at it, the Russians get involved, the Chinese get involved, you people probably get roped in, and somewhere down the line, people like me and you get fucked. We get blown up. An American president, while taking a cheeseburger shit, used Twitter to threaten a foreign country with nuclear annihilation. Luckily, Twitter's CEO, Jack Dorsey, was on it. He was on it. He took a look at Twitter's rules and policies, and he compared them to Trump's tweet, and he made a very methodical list of which of those rules and policies a nuclear threat was making. Turns out it's almost all of them. And then he did what he would have done with any other user behaving badly on his platform. He suspended Trump's account. He behaved ethically. He moved quickly. I can't even finish it. I'm sorry. Yeah, he did none of these things. Dick. He did nothing. He did nothing. He hid. A US president used his platform to declare war on another country, to threaten the citizens of another country with nuclear annihilation, violating all of the platform's rules and regulations in the process, and Jack Dorsey did nothing. He said nothing. On September 25th, 48 hours after that initial Trump tweet, Twitter co-founder Biz Stone finally addressed the issue in this short, tepidly written piece on Medium, and you can feel the leadership just jumping off the page here when it starts with, these are not my words. Some of you may have been asking why we haven't taken down the tweet mentioned here. It's the tweet that we all saw earlier. We hold all accounts to the same rules, blah, blah, blah. Among the considerations is newsworthiness, which is Latin for bullshit. This has long been internal policy and will soon update our public-facing rules to reflect it. We're committed to transparency. Here's the most important sentence in this article. This has long been internal policy and will soon update our public-facing rules to reflect it. There's always been a different set of rules. We just didn't tell you. That's immediately followed by the promise to remain transparent. There are always a different set of rules. We just didn't tell you. Now, some people have always understood that there's a different set of rules for one set of folk and another set of folk, not just at Twitter, but in the workplace, when interacting with police, and even when voting. It's almost a throwaway line, but it holds a very important key to Twitter's thinking. In short, they're going to move the goalposts accordingly. They're updating their policy on the fly to explicitly avoid banning Donald Trump. They've done it in the past, and they're going to continue to do so. At the same time, they will tell you that he's held to the same rules and regulations as every other user. After reading Biz's piece on Medium, I told him it sounded hollow. Actually, to be completely transparent, what I told him was, Biz, this is 100% bullshit, and this was his reply to me. Mike, this is the hardest time to stick to principles. The easy way out would be to ban, but that sets a precedent of subjectivity. Changing the rules to fit the situation is the exact opposite of principles and the exact meaning of subjectivity. It's cowardly and it's opportunistic. And they pulled the same shit with racist hate monger and anal wart Alex Jones not too long ago. After almost every other service in the world banned Alex Jones from their platforms, Twitter spouted some bullshit about how banning him would be subjective. Of course, once he physically accosted Jack Dorsey at the congressional hearings a couple months ago, he was banned the exact same week. Turns out Jack does care about harassment and abuse, his own. They're updating their policy on the fly to explicitly avoid having to ban Donald Trump. And you gotta wonder why, right? You gotta wonder why. It turns out that the answer is stupidly simple. Twitter is worth $2 billion, or Trump is worth $2 billion to these fools. And I get that they need users, and I get that they need eyeballs to survive. And the Trump Twitter economy is strong. According to Fortune, it's $2 billion strong. So tell us that. Tell us this is a business decision, a horribly stupid, unethical, and feckless one, to be sure. But please, please don't wrap yourself in principle. Please don't wrap yourself in free speech. Tell us that your business dies without him, and tell us that you're okay putting all of us in danger to keep making money. Fast forward a few months. April 10th, 2018. It was almost comically easy to find. April 10th, 2018, after the Facebook data breach, where Cambridge Analytica swiped about 100 million users' data. And if they're telling you it's 100 million, you better bet it's 200 or something like that. Mark Zuckerberg finally got pulled in for congressional questioning. Congresswoman Anna Eshoo asks him, are you willing to change your business model to protect users' privacy? Are you willing to change your business model to protect users' privacy? His reply, Congresswoman, I don't know what that means. And the thing is, I believe him. He doesn't know what that means, and that should scare the shit out of you. Twitter and Facebook are atomic bombs. And the cuddled runts who run these platforms have no idea how to deal with the platforms that they've built. They're scared, and I can't blame them for being scared. In their position, I'd be pretty scared too. But they're also unprincipled because they're making money off of this shit, and that money is more important to them than the well-being of the people using the platform. They lack an ethical core, and I can blame them for that. Because doing the right thing means doing the right thing no matter how scared you might be to do it. Twitter was conceived and built by a room full of privileged white boys. Some of them my friends, to be honest. Check this out. There's more diversity in the Martha Stewart white color list than there is on that couch. Yeah, and check out how Jack's holding that microphone. It's a good joke. I got the fire marshal dude to laugh, so. These guys never considered the possibility that they were building a bomb. And to this day, Jack Dorsey doesn't realize the size of the bomb he's sitting on. He doesn't believe he has an abuse problem. He believes he has a PR problem. It's not a PR problem. In this day and age, if you're building a tool with a global reach, especially a tool in the social space, you simply cannot leave it in the hands of a room full of white boys. Twitter didn't build in a way to deal with harassment, abuse, sexism, or racism, and they didn't build those things into the platform because the people building it had never experienced those things. And now the problem's too big to fix, especially if you don't want to fix it. Remember, Donald Trump and his ilk is worth $2 billion of valuation to these people. Twitter never saw Donald Trump as a problem because they saw him as the solution. As Upton Sinclair so eloquently put it, it is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. But what's really worse, it's filthy. What's really worse, and the reason that I'm here today talking to all of you about this shit, is that they couldn't have done any of this. They couldn't have done any of this without us and without people like us. It's our labor in the products that these fools are building. We're the ones who flesh this crap out. We're the ones working our asses off to make these things a reality. We're the ones building the bombs. And when we see the ethical shit show that we're helping to bring into the world, we do nothing. Or worse, we fashion blinders out of stock options and fat paycheck and swordfish on Wednesdays in the company cafeteria. But that's no longer okay. As designers, developers, engineers, or whatever you call yourselves these days, we need to realize that there's an ethical component to the work that we do. And it's more important than ever to exercise that judgment. And it's not optional. It's core. It's foundational to everything we do. It's not something you get to adapt to the ethics of your employer because it's becoming very evident that they don't have any. And it's not something that you can save up for a side hustle. It's core. It has to be. If you see yourself as a pair of hands, know that that blood is never going to wash off. Because right now, when I look out at the landscape of how we're spending our time, the precious little time that we get allocated to be on this earth. I see platforms that demean women, that demean minorities, that demean people based on gender, on creed. I see hate. I see fear. And I see a bunch of rich white boys riding this river of toxic sludge all the way to the bank. What I do not see, or what I do not see enough of, are tools to help people in need. What I do not see is a commitment to truth or a commitment to cut down on abuse, harassment. And before we can talk about how to do these things, it appears we still need to convince a lot of people that this is actually part of our jobs. Because I still run into a ton of people who tell me shit like, but Mike, I'm just a pair of hands in this situation. What can I do? Or, but Mike, I've got a mortgage to pay. What can I do? Or my personal favorite, I'm changing things from the inside, dude. Good. Making a living at the expense of someone else's humanity is not okay. Paying your bills by making software used to round up immigrants is not okay. Putting food on your table by protecting hate speech is not okay. And knowing this is all not okay, but turning a blind eye and pretending it's not there, well, that's really not okay. Don't ask how you're going to pay your rent working ethically. Ask why you're open to behaving unethically in the first place. Your right to earn a good salary does not supersede someone's right to live with dignity. But if you're not open to this shit, if you're not open to the shit that we've been building the past 20 years, and I sincerely hope you're not, if you'd rather spend the precious time you have left on earth helping people, we need to band together, because together we have agency. Together we're a force. Together we can do things that we cannot do on our own. And I didn't come here today to get you down. I came here to raise you up. I came here to help you understand how powerful you truly are. Because since the dawn of humanity, designers have been problem solvers. And these cuddled runts of Silicon Valley want to change the world. We actually have, time and time again. And it's time to do it again. And I showed up with tools. I got these little design ethics books here that I can give out to you guys after the talk when you come down. And some of you were at my workshop this morning and you got yours. Don't double dip. And they contain 10 easy steps for starting to fix this shit. And by the way, I've open sourced everything in here and it's all on GitHub and people have been translating it into different languages, which is amazing. So look it up there. And if you see it, if you know a language that's not there, add it. So let's start with number one. Before you're a designer, you're a human being. Like every other human being on the planet. You're part of the social contract. We share a planet, and everything that we do on it impacts the people around it. And the effect that our tools have on society has to be a key consideration of our work. The real question isn't whether something scales or whether something profits, but how does it impact the people it comes in contact with? And every human being on this planet, regardless of what you do, is obligated to do our best to leave this planet in better shape than we found it. Designers don't get to opt out. When you do work that depends on a need for income disparity or class distinctions to succeed, you are failing your job as a human being, and therefore as a designer as well. Number two, designers are responsible for the work that they put out into the world. You are responsible for the things that go out there with your name on it. And while it's certainly impossible to predict all of the shitty ways in which your work is going to get used, it shouldn't surprise you when work that is meant to hurt someone actually fulfills that mission. We can't be surprised when a gun we designed kills someone. We can't be surprised when a database that we've designed to catalog immigrants gets those immigrants deported. By the way, these were the fucks that built that database. We can't be surprised when an ad platform we designed to exclude people by religious belief is used to send out anti-Semitic political ads, as Facebook did. When we knowingly produce work that's intended to harm, we're abdicating our responsibility. When we ignorantly produce work that harms others because we didn't consider the full ramifications of that work, we're doubly guilty. You remember how excited you used to be about the internet? Man, we were going to change the world. We could make anything. We were going to create new economies. We were going to bring down totalitarian governments. We were going to give that one gay kid in Helena, Montana, someone to talk to. We had so much processing power at our disposal. That was the dream. This is the reason I decided to start working on the internet. And what did we do with that dream? We created the fucking service economy with that dream, where by definition, you need a group of poor people and a group of rich people. And the poorer the poor people and the richer the rich people, the better it works. The story of the internet right now is the story of the service economy. It's the story of haves and have-nots. It's the story of increasing the difference between the two. It's the story of fucking people over to make a profit. And this is where Silicon Valley is dumping all of its money right now. We are purposely and knowingly building a society that needs income disparity to succeed. That wasn't the plan. Let me introduce you to somebody you've probably never heard of. This is James Lang. Anybody know who he is? Raise your hand. You were in my workshop, you cheaters. James was an engineer at Volkswagen. James designed the software that lied about Volkswagen emissions testing. You remember that? And when Volkswagen got taken to court, a bunch of experts were brought in and they took apart James's software and they decided there's no way that James could have designed this software without knowing exactly what it was going to get used for. James knowingly designed software that skirted regulations, which was unethical and fucked. And a court agreed to this. James is in jail now. He's doing a 40-month sentence because James was responsible for the work that he made. We can go to jail for this shit now. And frankly, I think it's about time. Because we're not building websites with dancing baby gifs on them anymore. We're making things that store people's health records. We're making things that store people's financial info. We're making things that manage people's relationships with other people, and that shit is really hard to do. And not only does it take somebody with a technical skill set, it takes somebody with a solid ethical core. And amazingly, they let us do all of this shit without a license, which I think needs to change, and probably will very soon. think this thing just crashed. Enjoy. That's fun. Jesus freaking Christ. Number 3. We got to value the impact of our work over the form of our work. We need to fear the consequences of our work more than we love the cleverness of our little ideas. This thing that we do does not exist in a vacuum. Everything that we design, like I said earlier, goes into society. Last year, the US government put out an RFP for the border wall. About 17 design companies replied to the RFP. This is one of my favorites. This one has shops on the ground floor. Because you know what the concentration camps were missing? Gift shops. That would have made it okay. An object that's designed to hurt people, to harm people, cannot be said to be well designed, no matter how aesthetically pleasing it might be. Because to design it well is to design it to harm others. Nothing a totalitarian regime can design can be said to be well designed because it's being designed in the service of totalitarianism. And this is where our friend John Rawls, who Kenneth mentioned earlier, comes back. So John wrote a book, A Theory of Justice. It's 800 pages. You're not going to read it. It's boring as God fuck. Is it not? Did you read this thing? Some of it. Jesus Christ. I'd rather travel 40 years in the desert than read this thing again. But one of the things he writes about, as Kenneth mentioned earlier, is this veil of ignorance, which is, I think is the most genius idea in the world. And like Kenneth mentioned earlier, if you design something, your place in it gets chosen after it's been designed. For example, if you're designing a society where slavery is legal, you better be okay ending up as a slave. If you're designing a border wall, you better be okay on either side of that wall. If you're designing a camp with cages for children, you better be okay with your children going in those cages too. You think Travis Kalanick would have made the decisions that he made at Uber if there was any chance that he would have ended up as a driver in that situation or as a passenger in the back? You think Jack Dorsey makes the decisions that he's still making at Twitter if there's any chance that every reply to one of his tweets is a rape threat? Both of them would have made different decisions if there was any chance that they could have ended up in our position instead of theirs. And that's not principled. That's not ethical. That is wrong. Number 4, designers owe the people that hire them not just their labor, but their counsel. When you're hired to design something, you're hired for your expertise. Your job isn't just to produce the work, but to evaluate the impact of the work. Your job is to relay the impact of the work to your client or to your employer. And should that impact be negative, it's your job to raise a flag. And if it's impossible to eliminate the negative impact of that work, it's your job to stop that work from seeing the light of day. In other words, you're not just hired to dig a ditch. You're hired to evaluate the economic, the sociological, and the ecological impact of that ditch. And if the ditch fails that test, it's your job to break the shovels. A designer uses their expertise in the service of others without being a servant. Saying no is a design skill. Asking why is a design skill. Rolling your eyes and doing something that you know to be stupid and wrong is not. Asking ourselves why we're making something is an infinitely better question than asking ourselves whether we can make it. Building things because we can got us in the shit show that we're in today. Number 5, a designer welcomes criticism. No code of ethics should protect your work from criticism, be it from clients, the public, or other designers. Instead, you should welcome criticism from wherever it comes, because criticism is the thing that you need to create better work. And if your work is so fragile that it can't even stand to be criticized, it shouldn't exist. And the time to kick the tires on that work comes before it hits the street. And be open to it coming from anywhere. The role of criticism, when used appropriately, is to evaluate and improve work. It's a gift. It is a gift that we give each other. It makes work better, and it keeps bad work from seeing the light of day. And for the record, no, Jack Dorsey has not thanked me for my criticism. I still hope to hear from him someday. You got to know who your audience is. Design is the intentional solution to a problem within a set of constraints. To know whether we're properly solving those problems, you need to meet the people who are having them. And if you're part of a team, your team needs to look like the people who are having them. The more that a team can look like the audience it's solving for, the more thoroughly it can solve those problems, because you can come at it from different points of view, from different backgrounds, from a different set of needs and expectations. A team with a single set of view, like we saw on that couch earlier, is never going to be able to design something as thoroughly as a team with multiple points of view. And there's a myth out there that you build the tool that your team wants to use. But what happens when your team is all this guy? You put 4 of these guys together and you've got a Silicon Valley startup, by the way, and they'll be funded by Tuesday. And look, I could go the route of making the business case for all of this shit. Like, why would you ignore 50% of your possible users? Why would you leave 50% of your possible profit on the table? Oh, we just discovered that women have money and gay people have money, yada, yada, yada. But quite honestly, I'm really getting tired of money and profit being the reason why we sometimes accidentally end up doing the right thing. If we're saying that we should take women seriously because they have buying power, what are we saying about refugees? What are we saying about undocumented immigrants? What are we saying about children in peril? What are we saying about the poor? We need to value human life, all human life, because it's human life, not because it's a potential profit center. We need to stop thinking of people as consumers and start thinking of them as fellow human beings. Number 7, and I've seen this a couple of times today, which I love, a designer does not believe in edge cases. When you decide who you're designing for, you're making an implicit statement about who you're not designing for. And for years, we referred to people who weren't crucial to our product's success as edge cases. We were marginalizing people from the get-go, and we were making a decision that there were people in the world whose problems weren't worth solving. Our friends at Facebook now claim to have 2 billion users. What percentage of those are Russian bots? I don't know. But 1% of 2 billion people, which most companies would consider an edge case, is 20 million. 20 million people. Those are the people at the margins. These are all the trans people who get caught on the edges of real names projects. These are all the single moms who get caught on the edges of both parents must sign permission slips. These are all the elderly immigrants who show up to vote and can't get ballots in their native languages. They are not edge cases. They are human beings, and they, more than anyone, deserve our best work. Number 8, you are part of a professional community, and the way that you do your job and the way that you handle yourself professionally affects everybody in that community. Just as a rising tide affects all boats, taking a shit in the pool affects all the swimmers. Please stop shitting in my pool. If you're dishonest with the client or an employer, the designer behind you is going to have to pay the price. If you're the one not looking out for the ethical considerations of your work, and then I step into that job, I got to deal with that shit. If you don't hold your ground on doing bad work, the designer behind you has to work twice as hard to make up for it. And as a professional community, we need to get organized, because I have to hope that there's some designers at Facebook or at Twitter who want to do the right thing, who are trying very hard to do the right thing. And when they take a stand, I want them to know that as a community, we've got their back. No one does that work. If you get fired because you made an ethical stand, nobody takes that job. Nobody does that work. Number 9, we got to welcome a diverse and competitive field. Throughout our careers, we're supposed to be trying to learn, and that means confronting the things that we don't know, confronting the things that we're uncomfortable with. That means listening to other people's experiences. That means welcoming and encouraging people who come from diverse backgrounds, diverse cultures. That means making space at the table for people whose society has historically kept down. When your Women's Summit panel has less women on it than the Yale men's crew team, you've seriously fucked up. Diversity leads to better outcomes and solutions. It leads to better design. Twitter didn't deal with harassment and abuse because no one on their team, no one on their founding team had ever experienced those things. Facebook had to walk back their real names policy once they were confronted with the fact that there are people out there who, for whatever reason, can't use what Facebook considers their real names, or their government doesn't consider their real names. And yeah, they fixed it, but had they talked to, or better yet, had they hired some of those people, they might have avoided the problem altogether. It took Twitter a full year to implement blocking on their service, a full year after they launched. And I recently interviewed Heather Champ, who used to run trust and safety at Flickr. Anybody here remember Flickr? Yeah. So Heather was in charge of trust and safety there, and Heather looked at all of the photos that you would flag. She saw some shit. And I asked her, as a little exercise, hey, if you had been on that founding team at Twitter, how long do you think it would have taken for blocking to be implemented after launch? And without missing a beat, she said it would not have launched without it. Oh, what about empathy, Mike? Our company talks a lot about empathy. Turns out empathy, the way most companies talk about it, is just a pretty word for exclusion. We're going to go find out how women think. We're going to go find out how colored people think. Well, it turns out, this is going to be weird, they're not extinct, and you can actually hire them. You don't have to train your white boy team to find out how these people think, because you can go out and hire some of them, which is amazing. And finally, number 10, it's good to take some time for self-reflection every once in a while. No one wakes up one day just deciding to throw their ethics out the window. It happens slowly. It happens one slippery slope at a time. It's a series of small decisions that might seem fine at the time, and before you know it, you're making excuses for why you won't kick Nazis off your platform. Jack Dorsey, I know, right? Jack Dorsey didn't wake up one day thinking, oh, I know, I'll build a bomb. It happened slowly because a bomb he built. And there are several reasons why it happened. But I can tell you that there were several points where it could have also been stopped. But Twitter chose to ignore those points. Some of it was out of ignorance. The company didn't employ the type of people who could have seen the signs. But you can only use ignorance as an excuse once. And some of it was out of greed. Remember, Trump is worth $2 billion to these people. And since these problems have been around for a long time, since people have been screaming about abuse and harassment at Twitter a long time, I have no choice but to believe that at this point, Twitter is working exactly how they want it to work. Exactly how they want it to work. It is working as designed. So please, take the time for self-reflection. Evaluate decisions that you've made recently. Are you staying true to who you are? Or are you slowly moving your ethical goalposts a few yards at a time with each stock option reward and each raise that you get? Have you veered off course? Correct it. Is your workplace an unethical hellmouth? Get another one. Your job is a choice, man. And look, I started this talk by giving Twitter a lot of shit. And to be fair, they deserve all of it. But let me be really clear on why. There was a time when I thought Twitter was great. I really did. Most of the people I know today, I met on Twitter. The fact that I'm standing here in front of you right now talking probably has a lot to do with Twitter. I learned how to be a better writer on Twitter. And I get that I was really privileged to do those things because every time I tweeted, even something incendiary, nobody threatened to kill me. Nobody threatened to rape me. But there are a lot of people for who that's the norm. That's their normal experience on there now. And Twitter, by doing very, 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 very little about it, have shown that they're okay with that being the norm. I don't hate Twitter as much as I mourn it. I still think of what it used to be and what it could have been. And then I think of all of the people whose voices have been silenced on there, all of those people who have run away, all of those people who couldn't handle, justifiably couldn't handle, the constant abuse and harassment. And I think of all the employees within the company who could have stepped in to fix it, people like me and you, who could have taken a stand and said, this is going out with my name on it, and I'm not okay with it. And I keep thinking of where their line is, because obviously if people are still working there, they haven't reached it yet. Twitter's sins are twofold. Their origin story, like many origin stories in Silicon Valley, emerged from a monoculture. People who come from too similar a background and the same experiences designing a tool for a diverse world without taking that diverse world into account. White boys will always solve white boys' problems first, best, and at other people's expense. If you want to test this, tell your boss, the tool works for everybody except one group. It doesn't work for white boys. See how quickly you get extra time to work on that tool. Their second sin was capitalism itself. Twitter's the product of a system that rewards growth above all things because the people who put their money in need to get their money back times 10. And capitalism reduces people down to a set of assets. You're not a human being, you're fuel. You're fuel for their odious machine. So whether you're coming to the platform to have a civil chat, or because you're freaking out that the President of the United States is going to start a nuclear war, it doesn't matter. You're coming. You're coming. And if giving you all panic attacks makes you come more, we're going to market those panic attacks right back to you to get you to come even more. We're all going to die. This is known. I hope I haven't surprised any of you with this information today. So we have a limited amount of time on this planet to leave our mark. Jack Dorsey has left his, and history is going to judge him accordingly. But what I want you to think about before you die, which I hope is a long, long time away, is what kind of mark you want to leave. Do you want to whittle your days away making idiotic boy children rich while they silence the people who need us the most? Or do you want to earn that death by using your skills to help those that need you? So before I leave today, I want to remind you of 3 very important things. One, I want you to remember that you are a free people, free to choose how you spend the time that you have on this earth. And I implore you to use that time in the interest of making other people free. If you want to change how the world is designed, you have to not just change how we're designing it, but who gets to design it. I want you to remember that you're lucky that the world was designed more or less in your favor. You have homes, you have food on your table, you have jobs, you get to come to ridiculous events like this and listen to idiots like me. And that luck carries with it the responsibility to help other people who weren't so lucky. The truth is that none of us are here as much because we deserved it, but more because we won some lucky lottery of being born in the right place at the right time. But most of all, I want you to remember that you're more than designers. You're human beings, you're ordinary people, bound by the same contract as every other human being on this planet. And that our job is to elevate and help each other. And ordinary people like us, we don't build bombs, man. Thank you.
You told us.
Come get some books.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.